Michelle Krebs. I know she's on the board, and now I see her face, and she's got her audio activated, and we're good to go. And Michelle is with Cox Automotive, but for most people will have heard of AutoTrader. That's part of Cox Automotive. And we like
And
to
Kelly
get
Blue Book.
and Kelly, of course, yes. What am I thinking? Yes, that's the handbook for everybody that's looking to sell a car or buy a car, right? So
That's right.
I used it many, many times in my purchases. But I asked Michelle to come back on the show again so we could just kind of update what's going on with car prices. I mean, they're kind of yo-yoing a little bit, but I think they're coming down. Yes, no,
No, no.
Okay.
New car
I
prices.
stand corrected. Okay.
Well, it's two different things. So we are starting to see used car prices come down a bit. We measure wholesale prices; those are coming down a bit, but they're still pretty elevated. And the used car market is much more normal than the new car market. The new car market prices are continuing to rise. In fact, we are about to put out our June average transaction price, and it hit a record of over $48,000. The first time it's gone over 48,000. So.
Well, there goes Matt's idea to buy a new car. Right? Heck with that, right? You know, so
Right.
It's about right.
So, I mean, it's simple economics. There's very strong demand for new and used vehicles out there. The supply of new vehicles still is very low. We just are not budging. We thought by now we'd kind of be out of this chip shortage, or at least starting to get out of it, and production would improve, but it is not happening. So, so that the inventory is low, demand is high, and of course that means prices are high.
and that $54 billion bill that was going to be used to fund chip development in the United States, where it once was, when I started out way back when in Silicon Valley, California was lousy with chip developers. They were everywhere. And I unfortunately went overseas, and we've seen what's happened there. But even that bill now is caught up in Washington politics. And hopefully that'll go through. 54 billion. I know that I think it's Intel getting ready to build a plant in Ohio, right?
But they put that on hold until the CHIPS Act is passed. So they are not going to break ground until it passes.
Yeah, Matthew.
Okay. Well, what do you see currently happening with the continuing rollout of electric models? I was just in northern Michigan for a week, and there aren't many charging stations up there in the arc from like Manistee to Traverse City. So is that going to hurt adoption? Where are we on that?
Well, there are a lot more EVs rolling out, as you mentioned. And the sales keep going up. I think in this quarter, we might have hit 200,000 units for the quarter for everyone. Ford is really moving up. GM's getting out there. Hyundai's got EVs out there. So there's new models coming. The sales are increasing, but some of the obstacles continue to be the price, because the average EV is something like $66,000. That isn't attainable by most people. And the EV charging infrastructure is still lacking. When we did our EV adoption study 3 years ago, it was 2 years ago. Price was the main obstacle. Range and charging infrastructure were up there, but they'd actually declined in importance. Some of it is the range is getting a lot better. And, we are starting to see charging stations more, but there have to be a lot more for us to really proliferate EVs.
Yeah, and I think that's going to hold a lot of people back. I mean, if you're just doing commuting around Detroit, you're covered. But if you want to drive up to, the Upper Peninsula, I don't know about that one, unless you're driving a hybrid where you can fire up that internal combustion engine. But hybrids don't seem to be all that popular, do they?
Oh, no, they're very popular.
Are they?
They're double the sales of EVs. So hybrids and plug-in hybrids, double the market share. And it's hard to find them right now. They are the lowest inventory of any segment. They have the lowest inventory. They're just the Toyota RAV4 hybrid is super popular. You can't find them anywhere. And you do it, you're going to pay well over list price.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. It's not just the dealers are really marking these things up, right?
Some are. Some dealers won't do it. They insist on just being at MSRP, but we are seeing a lot of dealers markup way over MSRP. I mean, we hear stories of, thousands of dollars over MSRP. It's the first time in my career, which is, 4 decades, that we've seen, I think it's been for 12 consecutive months, the typical vehicle is selling for over list price. It used to be you never paid list price. And we also are seeing incentives at a record low.
Matt?
Okay. And what's the latest on Elon Musk's adventures with Tesla? Are they, indeed going to move all the production to Texas? Are they coming out with any new models? I mean, they haven't redesigned the thing in quite a while.
No, they have no new models on the horizon, although they keep promising the cyber truck. But that's been pushed into next year, and there are people wondering if it'll ever come to fruition. They claim they had their best production month in June once they get the Shanghai plant up going again, and their plant in Austin and their plant in Germany got rolling. But there have been some hiccups along the way. And then, just Elon Musk, lots of distraction with buying Twitter and then not buying Twitter and all kinds of things. So,
and it's space stuff. He's the
right.
space man, He may be the world's richest man, but I think he's pretty leveraged with all these different things going on, right?
Yeah, I don't really follow his personal finances that much, except that he is the richest man in the world. So I don't worry about his next meal. But they certainly are a story. Now, I was at an interesting meeting last week where John Murphy, who's the Wall Street analyst for Bank of America, was looking out, the next 4 years for, what the market's going to look like, what brands will do well, what ones won't. And he predicts that Tesla's market share by, I think it's 2026, will fall to 11%, where it's now well over 70% because of so many new entries. And he's, nothing new coming from Tesla that we know of.
But the people that a friend of mine, Rachel Conrad, a mutual friend of ours, has a Tesla, and she says she'll never go back to an internal combustion engine. She just loves it to pieces. She's also living in California. So,
well, California, that makes a big difference. I mean, you were talking about here in the Midwest. I mean, they are going to proliferate slower here. California, it is the #1 state for EVs. The Northeast is getting, has more, and they also have the infrastructure for it more than we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how many, charging stations do you think we're going to have to add to make?
I don't know. I've seen crazy numbers of what it's going to take. I mean, the infrastructure package we got passed has a lot of money for infrastructure, for charging infrastructure. I think that the states have to submit their plan to the federal government. I think it's by July or August. And then the federal government will put charging stations where they aren't, like on, interstate highways and such. So we should see some plans rolling out in the next couple of months of where they're going to be and how many.
Yeah, I would think rest stops would be an ideal location right on the interstates. You could pull in, take a nap, charge your vehicle and get on your way, right?
Could be. I don't know how they'll do that. And they're out there. There's some
how long is it? I mean, you've driven some of these, right? You've driven most of them?
I actually have not driven. I've not driven the Teslas. So no, I've driven. The most recent one I drove was the Ford Mustang Mach-E.
Okay. What did you think?
Yeah, it was a fabulous car, but I drove it to Ann Arbor. Wasn't sure I had enough juice for the whole trip, looked for a charging station, and there are 3 cars sitting there in the charging station and the parking structure, and I only think one of them was plugged in. So that's the problem.
And how long, in a good quality charger, I mean, I would assume you were looking for the 440 volt ones. They're the 400 volt ones.
Well, yeah, and I don't know how many. I don't know how many are out there, and I don't have a charger at home because I don't have an AV yet. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the big bugaboo. A lot of people live like in apartment complexes or lease spaces or whatever, or in rural areas. And it's a great idea. Eventually, but we just don't know what that eventually time frame is, right?
Yeah.
Well, and the other big question is there are a lot of people starting to think that maybe we don't have enough batteries to build all of these anyway yet. So, there's battery plants going in all over the place, but takes time to build the plants, takes time to develop the batteries. So, will there be enough? I don't know. And then, of course, the precious metals that go into them, that's a whole other story. So,
well, they found a lot in Turkey recently, but we do the ITC energy report every month, and they're not as concerned about it. They think they've got it planned out right, and they'll have the grid together. Of course, they're not the ones that actually produce the energy. They're the ones that transmit the energy around up to the last mile. But it's on their mind, certainly, because it takes about 7 years to put in new heavyweight transmission lines. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's got to get done before this thing becomes practical, right?
Lots of moving parts, the electrical grid. I was just reading before we came on, Texas has had some outages and warning people in these 100-degree temperatures that they may experience outages. How does that work?
Well, and there's even stories about brownouts here in the Midwest if it gets really, really hot, because we got so much demand, and for instance, the Palisades nuclear plant just is no longer functioning. I won't get into the politics of that, but it's just a fact of life that they're not producing energy, and that's one of the reasons that the grid might have brownouts. They were saying.
Okay. Just real quick, we're coming down to the end here. We got about 3 minutes to go. I wanted to know if you have any thoughts. I don't know if you cover this part of the industry very closely, but they talk about the supplier base being impacted by the rise of the electric vehicle, that there are a whole lot of people making parts for internal combustion engines that aren't going to be anymore. Just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, we have seen some consolidation of component companies. I mean, internal combustion engines are going to be around for a while, but we are seeing, companies reinvent themselves, try to shift more into electrification, merge with companies that do more electrification. But that it is going to be a shakeout. There will be a shakeout in terms of employment, because electric vehicle plants don't require as many employees. And I'm watching that for next year's UAW talks with Ford, GM, and Stellantis. That's going to be a hot topic there.
Yep, that's interesting.
All right. So if folks want to find out more about all the fine Cox automotive products and also how to reach out to you and whatnot, why don't you provide that information?
Well, if you're shopping for a car, obviously go to AutoTrader.com and KBB.com, Kelley Blue Book. We have a corporate website called CoxAutoInc.com that has all of our data and what the trends that we see in the market, and that provides you with how to reach us.